Welcome, everyone. We're super excited to spend the next hour with you. My name is Carla Verdi, and I am the VP of Learning and Development here at PuzzleHR. So welcome to Leadership of Tomorrow. We're excited to spend some time with you. As I said, my name is Carla. I'm the Vice President of Learning, and with me today is Heather Snyder from Omnia. Heather?
Hi, Carla. What a pleasure to be here. Thanks for including the Omnia team, myself on this seminar today. I'm really excited to be with everybody.
We're excited to have you.
So I'll share a little bit about just personally me. I live in the Tampa Bay area, recently moved to St. Pete, and I've dedicated my whole career to interpersonal skill development. I have a passion for leadership and just people and getting the most we can out of people and engaging in building thriving cultures. I joined the Omnia group almost 5 years ago, and Omnia has been around for going on 40 years. We'll celebrate our 40th anniversary next year. We're a woman-owned, women-led business based in Tampa Bay, and I have the pleasure of serving as the president and chief operating officer here. And primarily, our focus is helping organizations hire the best people, get the right people in the right seats, and then develop them to their full potential. And we do that through scientifically validated workforce assessments that focus on key behavioral traits and making sure those traits are aligned to the roles that they're in, as well as cognitive capability to assess the person's ability to learn and grow and adapt, which we're going to be talking a lot about today.
So
should we
excited.
handle it?
Yes, Heather, yes. So I'm super excited to be working with Heather. As I said earlier, my name is Carla Verdi, and we have a partnership, Omnia and PuzzleHR, and we share the same passion, Heather and I, around helping our leaders be their very best and providing tools so that we can help folks be better. So I'm excited to spend some time with you. Let's talk about our agenda.
All right. Well, we're going to get into it first with just today's challenges. I'm sure we don't have to educate too many people who've joined this call. If you've joined, you're probably already dealing with some of the challenges, but we're going to share some statistics and stats about what's making it so difficult today to find and develop people to be their very best. And then we're going to get into the traits, the specific traits of today's leader and a future-proof leader, as we promised you in the agenda for the symposium. We're going to talk a bit about how do you blend and get the perfect balance of the art and science of selecting and developing future leaders. So that's pretty much what we're going to cover. So let's get into it and talk about challenges. So the first one we want to talk about is just the war for talent that is still going on. It's been going on for years. It seems like it's never going to end, and all of the data and statistics is pointing that way. 75% of employers are reporting difficulty filling roles globally. In the US, our labor shortage is just slightly below the global average of 70%. And they're predicting that over 85 million jobs could go unfilled by 2030. And what frightens me about these statistics, particularly as we do our work in helping organizations but hire for fit, when you're facing such a talent shortage, you are tempted to cut corners. You're tempted to cut corners to maybe promote leaders before they're ready. We're tempted to just put a body in a seat. And that's just really dangerous. But I just want to acknowledge that with this talent crisis, that's a reality we're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And then another reality is this remote hybrid situation. 12% of US employers are now fully remote. I was just blown away by that statistic. We are 100% remote at Omnia. We've been 100% remote for a few years. And I think the stat I looked up is 65% of employees would prefer to work remotely, and 32% would prefer to be hybrid. And I have to say, I fall in that bucket. I've struggled a bit with the fully remote. I miss being around people. And we talk about traits, we'll talk about why that is. But when you're a leader and you are dealing with this remote world, or this world that wants to be remote or hybrid, or even, this problem's been around for a while, because we've all worked in situations where there's a home office or a main office and then satellites, or we have decentralized, or Perhaps we've got a distributed sales team that works out of their homes. This has been going on for a long time, but it's just getting more and more prevalent. And with that, leaders really need to be effective at building good communication, breaking down those silos, making sure there isn't this us versus them. And it really does require some difference in how you performance manage, how you work and focus on your culture, and even deal with just different time zone differences and how everyone's either having a challenge staying in touch, or maybe we're not taking enough breaks because we're working multiple time zones. So it's just a major challenge that again affects leadership and culture today.
Mhm.
And then as we talk about hiring, there are the costs, the hard costs of hiring and making those rush decisions. The US Department of Labor reports this every year, and this is a very stable statistic. A bad hiring decision usually does run about 30% of the first year earning of a hire. And that's the hard cost. That's the recruitment, that's the time that you put into it, maybe the signing bonuses, all of the things that go into that. But then think about the soft costs, the issue and impact when an open position has on your employees who are having to do the jobs of, do the jobs of many, or the retention and morale issues that come about from jobs that are open and we're feeling stressed or overworked, or what about when somebody leaves and all of a sudden somebody's like, what do they know that I don't know, or what's going on in that department? So it can have this whole ripple effect. So there are a lot of different costs that affect this. So those are just some things to be aware of as we're thinking about what leaders are dealing with today and what we need to do.
Yeah, and I think, Heather, we don't talk about that enough, right? For our leaders of today, we just kind of breeze over that. Like they should just know how to deal with all these difficult things that are coming at them. And we don't. We need tools and resources and help to figure out how best to make those connections, communicate effectively, drive engagement, right? And we don't do such a great job if we don't spend time developing those skills, right?
Exactly.
And one of my favorites is people lead leaders, and we know this to be true, right? And so I won't read you the stats, they're there for you to read yourself, but I think about the amount of people that do not leave companies, they leave leaders because the leader represents that company to that employee. That's how I see it. And so an employee doesn't look at the company as the company, they look at that leader that represents the company and what we stand for and what we don't. So if our leaders are not strong and they don't know how to deal with conflict and change and all the things that come at them, then unfortunately our employees want to leave and they'll go find someplace else. And with unemployment and everyone looking for great talent, it makes that really easy for an employee to bounce. And that is concerning. So I think it's important to understand, and we already know this stat, but it becomes really even clearer in today's with all the other challenges that Heather just shared with us. And when we think about the cost of an employee turnover, 80% is related to bad hiring decisions. And that's what we want to talk to you guys a little bit about. To me, I always say it's way more than the resume. And how do you see or figure that out? And that's kind of what we want to help kind of chat with you about a little bit today. So I want to share with you the things that, Heather and I brainstormed as we were getting ready for our session. And we thought, what are those traits to deal with those challenges that we see today? What are the traits of our future leaders? And we came up with these and we feel pretty confident about them. Number one is communicates openly. In communication, we assume that we're all good at it, and that's not a good assumption, right? Communication, it requires all levels, whether it's active listening or how we state something or sharing the vision and the purpose of the organization, making it safe for our employees to share with us what their concerns are and what's happening with them. So communication is a really big topic, and I think we sometimes breeze over it. And especially in this remote world, the way we use that voice of ours really makes a huge difference in the world of leadership. Trust is fundamental. Especially in today's world, it's tough right now. Everyone feels the pressure of our world today. And so we need to build trust. That's how we get fellowship, right? Is that if an employee feels like they can trust us and they're working in a trustworthy environment and they feel that kindness and respect, they're going to respond appropriately to us and they won't leave because it's more than just the work they do, it's the culture they are a part of. And that is so essential that leaders understand that we create culture. It's how we show up every day. It's the things we say, we don't say. It's the things we focus on and don't, right? Which takes us to the next one. And being an adaptive leader in today's world, if you don't adapt quickly, and pivot and understand priorities change and help your team work through that, right? Humans don't like change. We don't like it because it's unknowing and it kind of causes us to get fearful. Leaders have to be very good at making the adaptation and like kind of working themselves through change before they can help their employees get through that change curve. So change is inevitable. It's always going to be there for us. The rate is higher than it's ever been. So that being adaptive and leading people and themselves through change is essential, right? And then of course the last one and these all kind of tie to creating that engaged culture that we so longingly need. And again, when we think about the number of generations in the workplace, we have a lot of folks that really want to be part of something. And they need to know that they're part of something. And that's culture. And that creates that engagement. So those are the traits that Heather and I feel strongly about for the leaders of tomorrow.
You're so right. And I think just as you went through all of that, I'm like, man, that's a lot. It's a lot on a leader's plate, right?
Yes, yes.
To be able to do all those things. And those things aren't done. You don't learn how to do those things overnight, and you never stop learning. With every experience, with every time we mess up, hopefully, you've got the ability to learn and move on and learn from it. So when you think about looking at leaders, the four things that we always talk about in our research and our focus with clients is it's really four key things. And the first one is a leader has to have the skills, right? No matter what they're doing, they have to be able to do the job they're leading, or at least know how to learn how to do that job and what the job takes to be successful. So skills are key. No doubt, it's a no-brainer ticket to entry ticket to the game. Another thing that I don't think we talk about enough, though, is desire. They have to want it. When you're first talking to people about going into leadership, usually who do we look at when we think about leaders? It's the person who does do the job the best, right? How many times have organizations taken the best sales superstar and wanted to turn them into a sales manager? And what got you there might not keep you there. So they've got to have a desire to want to lead people and do the things that you just talked about, Carla, and those traits. And their own satisfaction, their personal satisfaction comes from a different thing because it comes from their team's wins, their company's wins, right? So that desire is so key, particularly with a leadership role. And then that personality fit. They've got to fit with the day-to-day responsibility of what they have to do all the time. There's nothing like having to do something that you don't enjoy doing all the time. It's just we call it job jail. So we'll get into what some of those traits are in just a moment. But then finally, that culture fit is so key. You got to understand, does the person really fit with it? We've another statistic that we cite a lot is that 73% of people who leave a job is because they didn't fit with the culture. And how often do we really think about what is our culture before we bring somebody new into it? Or what's the culture of our leadership team before we bring somebody into it? I'll tell you a quick story. I don't deal well with sarcasm. My family, it's a big joke. I have no sarcasm meter whatsoever. And one of my very first leadership roles, I was put on a team that was filled with sarcastic leaders. And I really struggled. And I didn't realize it at the time, but as I think about culture fit now and just where we fit, that's a culture aspect. I was talking with another organization the other day that did say they hire people with a sense of humor because they honor and value humor in the workplace. There again, I mean, you can interview for that. So
I
that
love it.
there's so many things to think proactively about. So let's talk about personality for a little bit. One of my, of course, favorite topics. And we just believe no matter what you're doing, or who you're using, that you should be doing some sort of, oh, did I miss something? I did. Sorry. Go back. I was so excited to get into personality that I forgot that I also wanted to talk about just being clear about what you need. So when you're looking at leaders, whether you're going to hire someone from the outside or you're thinking about the person that you're going to promote, the first thing we always talk with our clients about is that job description, and really spending time on making sure it's clear, because that job description forms the basis for your success criteria, the first 90 days assessment, and performance management the rest of the way through. So that is your baseline foundation starting with any role. So making sure the job description really reflects current responsibilities. What does the day-to-day look like? What is this person going to need to do? What does success look like? We recommend you talk to top performers in the job and think of asking them, like, what do you love about this job? And what don't you enjoy about this job? So that you can get a bigger picture about a clear picture about what kind of traits and skills you need in the person that's going to go into it. And then be clear about, back to that cutting corners. You probably aren't going to find the perfect person, even though we are going to try for it. So come up and be clear about what your non-negotiable list is and what your wish list is. So for instance, a very simple one, but it's good to have conversations about, is you may think you need someone with a degree, but what does experience look like to compensate for maybe the degree? So that's just one thing to think about. We might not be so strict about that if we can get other things. So non-negotiable versus wish. And then just to touch on culture again, I know I beat that horse a bit, but really being honest about what kind of culture you are. Considering, are you a risk-taking culture? Are you entrepreneurial? Are you changing and adapting and bringing new products in constantly? Do you value agility? Or are you a stable, mature organization that's had your success because of being steadfast and true? Well, that really depends on what kind of leader you're going to look for when it comes to putting those leaders in those roles. And then again, not settling, really be clear about your outcome, those non-negotiables, and no matter how tempting it is in this labor market, don't cut corners. And so getting at that, now I'll talk a bit about the science and the behavioral insights, and I'll talk about what Omnia measures, but really there are a lot of great instruments out there. So what I say to everyone is just use something, use some science. Don't just use your gut. Don't just go by resume. People are fabulous at interviewing. You can learn how to be a great interviewer. So you've got to get to science to see, is this person really wired for the job? And there are 4 key traits that we believe and have learned through our experience over the many, many years, 4 key traits that are fundamental to most roles. The first one is level of assertiveness. And you can look at each of these traits as a dimension where there's a yin and a yang, really, of each. So for instance, in assertiveness, you can have a highly assertive individual who is very driven, goal-oriented, competitive, challenge taker, risk taker, really extreme. And then you've got a more supportive personality trait that comes across more cautious, more we-oriented, more supportive, more service-minded. So again, can you see the difference right there in a role, a leader, of what kind of leader you need? In sales, we definitely want people who are highly assertive, go for the win, know how to close, know how to negotiate. In leadership, you need people who are great with dealing with conflict. They can have those tough conversations. They can fire people, right? You've got to have all those traits. So that's that highly assertive. But in leadership, you also need to be supportive. You need to be all about the we. So you really want to measure and understand, what is the balance of that person's makeup, and is there one? Sociability is about a person's communication style. Yes, extrovert and introvert versus introvert, but also how they go about problem solving. Are they more go by the gut, feeling, intuitive, or analytical? Really want to look at the data and the facts and the objectives. Again, different roles call for different things. This person may need to be the representative of your company and out and about and networking and on the stage a lot. You need someone highly social. If they're, though, dealing with a lot of data and they're leading your accounting or finance department, you need them to be more analytical and more reserved and more able to do the deep work at their desk for hours at a time. So you can see the differences and why you need to get to that, and how people will aim to be the thing they think you want them to be in the interview. So that's why it's important to get down to the science of it. Pace is another factor. There are individuals who love to work at a very fast pace, like Carla was talking about, that ability to adapt and change. And yet there are roles that require more of a methodical approach. And there are many, many people who prefer to work that way, where it's one thing at a time, let me get it done all the way through and then move on to something else. So thinking about your culture, thinking about those roles, what degree of pace and multitasking and plate spinning in the air are required versus the degree and the nature of the work that might require more focus and routine, and making sure you're hiring to that. And then finally, another trait that is so important when it comes to leadership is the need or the lack of need for structure. So Carla talked about that need to adapt and change quickly, that need to move before maybe even I fully understand what it is or where we're going, but I got to get my team on board. That's a resilience and a big picture mindset that only science can measure. Only data can really look at and see, does this person have that trait? On the flip side of that are people who are more perfectionist, detail oriented, the people that will major over the minors. Are all the I's dotted and the T's crossed? And again, you have roles in your organization that require that. You have lots of places in organizations where we need perfection. We need 100% quality. We can't go with a done is better than perfect mentality. So you need to know what mindset of the leader that you're dealing with and help make sure you got those right people in the right seats. So hopefully these traits give you some perspective of, like, when we're thinking about traits of leaders, how to measure for those, get the right people in the seats, and now let's develop them to their full potential. So Carla, let's talk about development.
Yeah, I mean, Heather, I love what you said about, the right fit, right? And you can see if you put someone into a position and they have strengths in opposite areas where they're not going to be a good fit. And then everyone loses. It's not just the company. The employee is not as engaged. They're not going to do what you need them to do because it's not it's not their natural gifts. And I think what I love about Omnia and the science behind it is it helps us see that person's natural strengths and kind of where they really have that strength, and that, they could leverage it within the organization. So I'm a huge fan, because I agree with you, Heather, when we're interviewing, we have a tendency to use our intuition. We have a tendency to lean in one area or not. We've experienced that at PuzzleHR, right? When we think about a position, what are we looking to hire, bringing in? And we know with Puzzle, we're a 5-year-old company. We've grown very quickly, right? And structure component, we're still figuring it all out. And so someone that needs strong structure would find our culture kind of intimidating and aggravating. And we don't want that, right? We want happy employees. So being honest during that interview process of saying, here's what our culture looks like, here's what it requires to win here, right, allows that person to make that good decision and fit too. So you've heard me say it, I'll continue to say it, it goes way beyond a resume, right? To me, it's the traits of a human being that's going to either fit or not. And then we can talk about that, right? And you're never going to find the perfect candidate, right, Heather? We'll never find perfection. But this gets us a little closer to understanding and making the right match for the right position in the company. So let's talk about developing those leaders. Once we grab them and we have them with us, or we're promoting from within. And as Heather said earlier, I do want to talk about, let's not just promote experts, everyone. That hurts us. It really does hurt us. We need experts in roles. We don't need everyone wanting to be a leader. You know, your population should be somewhere between 10 to 15% within your organization that you're developing for leadership, right? It's not everybody. So we have to be very mindful of, we're going to talk about developing future leaders, but as we start to think about it, some of these skills are even for your experts in place, right? How do we continue to develop them to make them their best? If they don't want to lead other people, we shouldn't push them into that, right? Because as Heather said, if you're going to be a leader, you need to desire to be a leader. You need to have that want, because it's a giving role. It definitely is about giving. So we want to talk about what we came up with, which I love this. You know, what does it take to be a great leader, right? And it's self-awareness. Do I know me? Do I know what I'm good at? Do I know what I'm not good at? Right? And can I be aware of others? And, you know, when I start to think about self-awareness and awareness of others, it really speaks to emotional intelligence, doesn't it? Right? It strongly speaks to that. So what we know is leaders not only need to be self-aware, but they also need to be aware of other people and pick up on the cues and the things that we might not be paying attention to, and then adapt and apply, adapt and apply. We're constantly changing. And then we take in more information and we see where we are, and it's this reiterative process. So as we talk about the traits, we thought it would be good to think about it in those three buckets, right? So it kind of starts with, you know, communicates openly. We had talked about that trait being an essential trait in today's world of leaders, right? And self-awareness. And what does that mean? What does that look like when it comes to communication? And one of my favorites is that, you know, a great leader not only communicates effectively, but they seek feedback. They're always looking to be self-aware. And how do I get better? Have what I shared with you or the way I'm leading you, does that work for you? What am I missing, right? I always encourage leaders to do start, stop, and continue, right? It's a great way of getting feedback about how am I doing, right? Leaders need to demonstrate transparency. In today's world, it's okay to be transparent. It's how we say it, right? People are onto us if we're not transparent. So I think it's good leaders are able to take information and formulate it into communication that allows us to demonstrate transparency, that our employees can trust us, right? So when we get to that trust component, this leads us to trust, right? And being able to share what we can share, because people know, they want to know what's going on. And we also need to be super aware of our triggers, like what sets us off as a leader when someone is communicating with us, right? I remember, I'll tell a quick story. I'm a no nonsense kind of girl, high pace, always going 100 miles an hour, very assertive, right? And when I was a younger new leader, if someone came to me and kind of was like, you know, their pace was slower, and they just wanted to kind of, you know, get to know me and talk about the weather and everything. And I'm like, you know, TikTok, like, let's go. I don't have time for this, right? And so I am confident that I probably gave that impression on to whoever I was talking to, that you're not important. I learned from that, right? In today's world, my people come first, and listening is an amazing way of building trust and showing and demonstrating care to our employees, right? Awareness of others. Wow, we have to pay attention, especially in this remote world that we live in, right? At PuzzleHR, we have a golden rule. When we communicate, cameras are on. Why? Because 60% of the way we communicate is our body language, right? And so if I miss that, I'm missing pieces of information that I could have maybe picked up on. Like, I'm a huge, like, I don't like to teach if I can't see your face. Thank God Heather's looking at me today, because no one else is, right? Like, I need someone I can talk to, because I play off of that, and I'm very in tune to what they're not saying, right? And that body language tells us so incredibly much. So as much as sometimes our employees are like, won't with the cameras on, there's a reason that we have that standard in our culture. It is to drive that awareness. It helps us know and pick up on the things that we might be missing. Right. And then, you know, we have to remove distractions. And I think that's one of the things that causes confusion for us in today's world. So communication, to me, is removing those distractions and ensuring our folks know what their priorities are, and they have everything they need to win. Right. And that, to me, is essential. And how we develop people, number one way is providing good feedback. Right. People want to get and receive feedback. Of course, we want to be recognized and rewarded, but more importantly, we want very targeted feedback so we can be better, right? And most of employees today want that. So we have to be good at giving that feedback, right? Providing that feedback so that someone can learn from it. Yeah. Anything else, Heather, before I move, right?
The only thing that struck me, and again, back to the remote environment and the open communication, I'm an off the chart people person. I'm a verbal processor, would much rather talk something out than email about it. And it wasn't until I got to Omnia and really understood these personality traits and how when I picked up the phone just to call and talk to somebody, someone made me aware that that would freak a couple of our employees out. Like when Heather calls, the first thing they think is they're in trouble or they've done
Yes.
something wrong. They weren't able to really talk to me because their nerves took over. So again, we can constantly learn. And again, understanding that what we think is normal or natural or just a should do isn't normal or natural for someone else. So that's the only other thing that came to my mind when you were talking about that awareness of others when it comes to communication and how traits vary, and it can really impact the effect of, or the result of what you're trying to accomplish with all good intentions.
Right. And with Omnia, you're able to know that about yourself.
Yeah.
We know that you're
I know
Omnia
exactly
clearly
who I
tells
can
us.
pick up and call and who I need to say, hey, I would like to talk to you and this is what it's
Yeah.
about. And I'll write like a 3-bulleted email first.
Yes, Heather. Yeah, you and I are very similar in that. We don't think anything of picking up that
No.
phone, right? But others might think differently, and that's the awareness that we get from
Yeah.
a personality assessment. It gives us that insight, and we sometimes are unconsciously. And we don't even realize what
Right.
we're doing, right?
Right.
Like that's our go-to simply because of how we're hardwired. But
Yeah.
being able to understand that people are not hardwired as us is really kind of where the magic starts, right?
Yeah.
There is diversity and there's
Yeah.
differences, and we have to be in tune to those differences and not assume everyone does the way we do, right?
Right.
The other trait
Yeah.
is build trust. To me, this one is essential. To me, in today's world, again, this is a very big word. And I think we have to work extra hard to build it. And the way we do that is one of my very first things is vulnerability-based trust. And what do I mean by that? That means it is okay for a leader to say, I don't know. I'm not good at this. I need your help with this because that's something you're really good at, right? So understanding what we're good at, what we're not good, and being okay with sharing that information with our people, our peers, our teams. It is okay. It doesn't make us look bad or not effective as leaders. It actually makes us look human, and that is okay. So when we demonstrate human, they feel more comfortable to demonstrate human and share with us, and they don't hide things from us. So for me, trust is essential, right? We keep confidences. That's it's so important. Sometimes we hear information from one of our folks that may be something they're sharing with us. We need to keep those confidences. I always say Vegas rules, right? That's huge, right? What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? It's the same thing. When people share information with us, it is not for ours to pivot and share their information, right? We have to keep confidences. I love the next one, that we can present truth in an appropriate manner. Like I said, sometimes we have to make tough decisions, or our companies have to make tough decisions, and we're the messengers. We're the ones that are expressing that, right? We first have to get ourselves through that change and adapt to it. But at the same time, we have to be able to present it in a way that allows someone to understand what we're doing, why we're doing what we're doing, and how we're going to move the ball forward, and that they're going to be okay. That's a huge one for me. Look, I got you. You're fine, right? And I could be freaking out underneath, like the little duck with the feet under the water. But my goal is to make sure that people know that I got you, and we're going to be fine, right? We're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. And then for me, you want to build trust, reward, and recognize the right behaviors, right? Reward and recognize the right behaviors. That is what causes great culture and builds trust, right? So when an employee of mine shares with me something that they think I might not like to hear, I go out of my way to thank them for sharing that with me, right? Regardless of what it is, why it is, what they're thinking, feeling, my first thing is thank you for sharing that with me. Because if I'm aware of it, I can do something about it. If I'm not, this is where quiet quitters come in.
Yeah.
Right? They quit us and they just sit at their desks and they get the little jigglers, right? Together, right? And they're not with us anymore.
You know
So
how I feel about those jigglers.
that is not cool. Whoever came up with that, that is right. So when I say we reward vulnerability-based trust, that means we are telling people, thank you for sharing that with us. It gives us insight. It helps us make better decisions. And so those relationships with our folks is essential. I say peer relationships are number one, and I think a lot of leaders forget that. And what do I mean by that? Leaders need to be aligned across the organization in order to not cause confusion below us, right? If I am only worried about my team and Heather's only worried about her team, those team members have to work together. And so if I'm saying this is priority, Heather's saying, no, no, this is priority for my team, it causes this cross purpose and people get confused. So to me, strength of peer relationships, I think leaders kind of put that second, and I think it needs to be number one. If I have a great relationship with my peers, we're going to be singing off the same sheet of music, which does not cause confusion. And ultimately, it builds trust in the organization, right? So ensuring their team is their number one priority as well. My people come before my task list. And I say that to leaders all the time. You can always get to your list of tasks. Do not make the mistake of putting your tasks before your people. That's not how we build trust, right? And then, a big one for me is that leaders need to seek to understand, right? They have to be curious. We cannot do assuming right now. In today's world, we could make really bad assumptions, take action steps, and break culture, break trust, and not even realize that we're doing that. So we need to remember to be curious. That's one of my favorite words, teaching leaders. Great leaders are always curious. We do not come in with an already made up mind. We come in with a load of questions, right? And that is what helps us gain that clarity so that we can move forward. And then my other favorite one is don't hold on to the past. When someone has made a mistake, once we talk about it, let it go. Don't hold that. And put that over someone's head. They could have worked really hard to develop a new skill or be better in that area. And you keep bringing up the past. That does not build trust. So let's let it go. Once we've talked about it, addressed it, move forward, right? I think it's essential that we do that. And then be mindful of how we respond to mistakes, my own mistakes, as well as others' mistakes, right? How I deal with those is I need to demonstrate for everyone else that it's okay. Like I always say, fail fast, get back up, learn from it, and move forward, right? The world is not going to come to the end. So let's just be mindful of that. So how we respond to our mistakes as well as others either breaks or builds trust, right?
Carla, one of the best stories I heard around that example was a newer employee who made a mistake in pricing a client implementation, and they had about $10,000 cost overrun. And to your point about how the leader responds when someone else, how they respond when they make a mistake and being open about it. But the world watches when an employee makes a mistake like that, right? And the employee was just sure they were going to get fired. And I loved how the leader said, and this is like a legendary story, is that, I'm not going to fire you. I just paid $10,000 to train you. It was like such a great moment of just the way that leader responded and the confidence he put into the employee that, you won't do this again. You learned.
Yeah,
So
that's awesome. I always say that to my 22-year-old Heather. We don't fail, we learn,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Not we don't
exactly.
fail at anything. We just learn from it. Like, again,
Right.
and if we're observant and we learn from it, the beating ourselves up or beating others up for learning is really bad.
Right.
We don't want to
Exactly.
do
So
that.
again, back to how we respond when we make mistakes, or like to your point, admitting we don't know something is also key. Don't pretend. Be honest, and you've got a lot of people on your team who would love to jump in and help when you don't know
Exactly.
something.
I
So
love that. And when we ask for help, it does build trust, doesn't it?
yes,
They like to help. They
yes.
want to help us. So when we ask for that, it's amazing what that shows up as, right?
Yeah.
The next one is adaptation and leading people through change. This one is big, you guys. Again, as I said earlier, change is inevitable and it is constant and it is fast and it's sometimes exhausting. We talk about change fatigue. Good Lord, we all can feel that at times, right? Like here we go again with the change, right? but we need to be very aware of what those future trends are so that we can prepare our people for that, right? Like I always say to my team, nothing lasts forever, right? Today, here's our priorities. Tomorrow, they could be something completely different, and I need you to be okay with that. I will ensure that you're doing the right work. That's my job, right? So that you don't get yourself into trouble. But what I need is you to shift with me when I ask you to shift, right? So leaders have to be really good at leading people through change. And one of the most important things people need is why. Why? Why are we doing this? Right. And so for me, for leaders, is do you know how to state the why? Can you get an employee to understand, we know this might be painful, but let me tell you why we need to get through this change. And so that you understand how the company benefits, how you benefit, how our clients benefit, whatever that looks like, it's essential when it comes to leading people through change, right? The other thing for me for leaders is that, again, I see that here at Puzzle, sometimes they need to move without having all the answers, right? Sometimes you got to make a decision. And so I have a golden rule. Let's get it 80% right and let's go, because we'll make the tweaks, the improvements once we roll it out. Let's not shoot for 100%, because then we might get into this analysis paralysis. And by the time we're done, the change is gone and we've missed it. So for me, it's like, what is that number for you? For me, it's 80%, and we'll tweak the rest of it. But we need to get leaders good with moving the teams to action, even when we're not sure of all the answers, right? It's hard. So really the last one is then being able to mitigate risks and uncertainty, right? It's okay. We can anticipate them as best as we can to mitigate them, but they're always going to be there, right? There's always a risk of everything that we do. And so can we understand what that risk might look like and what the impact it may have before we make that decision, right? And then with awareness of others is understanding people don't like change. And I'll say it and say it and say it. People don't like change. Why? Because we want to be able to predict. Did you know that? Human beings want to be able to predict. And with change, we can't predict. We don't know what that means. And so it causes us to be fearful and dig our heels in. That is human nature. Why? We're grounded in safety, right? Survival. If we just think about Maslow's hierarchy, right? We are hardwired for survival, right? Change comes at me. I can't predict the future. I don't want to change. So great people resist change. We all do, because it's scary to us, right? So it's essential that when someone is struggling, that we demonstrate empathy. That is the time to say, I get it. I know. Let's talk about what your concerns are, right? I want to hear that. What's going on? What are you worried about? Let's remove those risks and concerns. And the only way we're going to do that is make it safe and demonstrate empathy for them to share that with me. Boy, I'd rather them share it than hide it and me trying to figure it out. I get there a whole lot faster, right? So it's really important that we show and we demonstrate change gracefully. Like I always say, don't take things so seriously. I have a twin sister that works in the nursing world. They save lives. We don't. And that is way more serious than the work that I do, right? So as much as my work is important, we are not saving lives here. And so kind of putting it in perspective of, hey, let's move from it. Any thoughts, Heather?
I'm going to go back to curiosity, Carla. I loved what you said about how we need to be curious. And if you're curious, I think that helps you with the why. So one of the ways I think we can do that with leaders is encourage them to stay current. Every leader should be listening or reading, right? Constantly, educating themselves on, like you said, the trends. So I don't think it's okay to not stay current on pop culture, what's popular happening right now, because it has a ripple effect in the business world. Listening to podcasts, listening to getting daily newsletters, those kinds of things. So I just think it really starts with that, and we should be encouraging that curiosity. And again, not just in our leaders, but in our people. So if we're about to embark on a change, it's probably a response to some major trend that's impacting our business, our clients, our industry. Educate your teams then around it and equip them with the evidence. So I loved how you said that right from the start.
Yeah. I think it's one of the most important important components, right? I think, as a leader.
Yeah.
And then my favorite one, creating an engaged culture. This is one of my very favorites, and I think it is one of the most powerful things a leader can do, right? And again, I'm going to go back to empathy. Empathy in today's world is part of emotional intelligence, but it is a huge component of leadership today's world. It is about being empathetic towards our folks, right? As I said before, world is hard right now. Life is hard, right? People struggle. And so we have to demonstrate empathy and flexibility, right? Around what's happening, right? And in order to do that, we have to be genuine and we need to share our thoughts, our concerns, and do it in a way that allows other people to know that we are listening to them, right? I think when we listen, it drives engagement. Think about when someone listens to you, and think about when you're talking to someone and you know they're not listening. The impact that feels, right? I teach this all the time. You know that we cannot multitask. It's impossible for our brains to do that. Actually, the percentage is 2% in the United States of people that are actually effective at multitasking, 2%. So we get distracted with our own task list, our own to-dos, right? I want you to think about when you have an opportunity to talk to one of your folks or your peers, are you giving them your undivided attention? Are you really listening to them? Or are you trying to, what, right? That. And that to me sets the tone that you're not important and my task list is way more important. That to me drives a very bad culture. It means that you serve a purpose only to me as an employee, and I don't really care about you. I don't think leaders today cannot care. I think we have to care.
Right.
Right. And that's one of those traits for me, like you said, Heather, is if I care about people, I'm going to probably be a better leader than if it's all about me winning. That's not a good leadership trait, in my opinion, right? Awareness of others, again, let's encourage collaboration. Look, we can't do it on our own anymore. Things move too fast, change too fast, right? Let's share, let's collaborate, let's encourage that, right? And as we think about that, that's what people want. They also want to be developed. Employees want to be developed. We hear it over and over and over again. So making that time and giving them development. And how do we do that? Teaching them something, giving them difficult projects, challenging them, getting them involved in stuff that they maybe have not done before. But when we develop our people, they feel like the company is giving back to them, and it helps create that engagement. Look, if you care about me, it's easier for me to care about you, right? It's easier. But if you don't care about me, I can feel that, and I'm not going to probably care about you. Think about that. It's like that olive branch, right? And the other one for me is encouraging innovation and creativity. Look at, if we always do things the way we've always done them, we're always going to get what we've always got, right? We know that comment. So for me, being innovative and creative, my team gets so excited when I say to them, hey, I need your help with something. They're like, what? Right? And we have a problem to solve. Here's our problem. I've thought about it, but I'm really curious what your guys' thoughts are. Wow, does that create engagement? Because they're helping, they're part of the solution. And so leaders don't have to have all the answers. We don't have to have all the solutions. We don't have to have all the answers. We do not. What we need to do is create a culture that's innovative and creative, and we encourage that, right? I always say brainstorming, there's no bad ideas. There isn't.
Right.
We don't shut that down. Let's pick the one that makes the best sense, but we don't have to put them down if they're not great ideas. We want to reward that they're actually participating, right? And then make sure we're leveraging our people's strengths. Their work should align to their strengths, what they're good at. That's going to make them feel good, right? So we want to make sure that we're leveraging what they're good at, because that makes them feel like they're doing worthwhile work, right? And then with our adapt and change, it's just always asking for feedback and suggestions, and reward that innovation, okay? So we have a question, Tara. Did you want to share?
We do. So Joshua wants to know if we have any advice on how to keep in touch with all of the different trends that could impact our business team culture. There is so little time these days, and I struggle to keep in touch with current events. So Josh, I love that question. It sounds like you might be responding to what I said of like, you've got to find the time. we all have downtime. It's like just a matter of thinking about the downtime. And I'll just say personally, one of the things I have become really fond of are podcasts, because I can listen to them while I'm driving. Driving to a meeting, I can listen to them while I'm getting ready in the morning. I listen to one while I walk my dog. And I'll share my most recent favorite, the dog walking one, where I learned the most about what is happening in the world today, economically, business wise, and a little pop culture with some fun thrown in, is the Morning Brew Daily. It's
I
just
love.
summarized so quickly, and it does it really in a fast way that energizes me every single morning while I'm having that dog walking time.
Awesome, Heather. Thank
Carla,
you.
do you have a favorite or a way you?
I don't, but I'm with you. It's podcasts. I think
Okay.
podcasts make it really easy, right? Like, so I think you can take in that information in an easy take in the information kind of way. So, right, like, so if I'm cooking or baking, instead of listening to the radio, I'm listening to a
Yep.
podcast.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Feed your
They're my
brain any
favorite.
chance you can. That's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yep, yep,
Yeah.
great.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Okay.
All righty. Well, we are coming up to the summary and we have time for more questions. So please pop them in there. We'd love to hear from you. The first thing that Carla said, or she said so many things, right? But there was something that she said that I want to just point out quickly, because today's session is about leadership and future-proofing leaders. But Carla, you said something I thought so important is we need everybody in our organizations developing these traits, really,
Yeah.
right? Everyone should communicate openly. We should have a culture where we're all driving to build trust with each other, with our colleagues, and where we're all adapting and getting through change together. And we all contribute to the culture. Not one person sets culture. Culture is the way things get done in your organization, and that's by your people. And engagement, by the way, is how they feel about it. So how engaged they are is how well they feel about the way things get done. So I just felt like that point needed to be highlighted. But we are here to talk about leaders. So I think just the net summary for it is, as you're looking for leaders of tomorrow, whether you're hiring from outside of the organization or from within, making sure you consider the traits that are most required in the role and these traits and interview for them, and make sure your questions get to times. Tell me about a time you made a mistake. Tell me about, and then you're going to hear how did they handle it? How do they feel about mistakes? Tell me about a time you dealt with a mistake. Tell me what you think your role is driving culture. So getting to it when you're selecting. And then it doesn't stop once you hire someone. They could be the best leader that shows up day one. But guess what? They're going to have some fails. They're going to have some mistakes. They're going to have to work with someone they might not like, or a challenging work situation that gets thrown in. So we need to constantly nourish and feed and develop our leaders, and help them build that self-awareness and that encouraging and rewarding them to adapt and apply every day. So in a nutshell, that's, I think, our passion, right, Carla? Spend another day just talking about. But we'd love to hear from you.
We actually have one question in the Q&A.
Okay, super.
Should leaders learn how to effectively deal with issues and conflict?
Oh, yes. And
I think that's a career staller for a leader. I'm going to be honest with you. I think that's a career staller for a leader, meaning if they can't, that stops their growth up the food chain. What we know today is top leaders have to be very comfortable with dealing and confronting the conflict. If you don't, then that hurts your culture, right? Because everyone's looking at you, you're the boss. What are you doing about it, right? And so we need to be more mindful of step into those difficult situations where sometimes I'll see a younger leader trying to avoid it. And I always say they use hope as a strategy. It's not, just so you guys know, hope is not a strategy. So we have to actually take action steps to resolve conflict. And I think it is a career staller if a leader is not good at that.
Oh, I would agree. And here's the other thing I would say about conflict is don't allow the up, over, and down. So people are going to naturally come to you as the leader to address the conflict. And my first question is always, what did they say to you when you talked to them about it? And that's scary too, right? Because nobody gets up in the morning and goes, great, I get to go have conflict with somebody today. So help your employees with the conversation. Take time, let them role play, practice. But to build great cultures, we need people to deal with problems where they're happening and not go up to leaders and expect leaders to address them. And leaders taking on conflict, I think the hardest one is performance management. We all know when we have a problem, and avoiding that performance management in those tough conversations is hard. So once you see a trend, you do need to deal with it. If it's an issue or an incident that happens between two employees, that can be dealt with the employee. But if this is an incident that's becoming a trend, that's happened with more than one person, is having an impact on the business, then the leader needs to get involved.
I love that. And Crystal said, should we encourage employees to confront amongst themselves? Yes, but
Yes,
don't do
that's
it without teaching them
exactly it.
how. Like,
Yeah.
so if you're going to do that, I think it's wonderful, but let's make sure they have the tools to do it the right way, because if they do it the wrong way, now they're damaging those relationships, and we don't want to do that. So I love that. As long as we're teaching them how to use tech into those difficult conversations and have them respectfully and the right way, right? And so that people don't walk away feeling like someone just verbally assaulted me. That is not going to build strong culture. So
No.
I think I love when we encourage them. Sometimes, like Heather said, I need to bring them in and have them do it in front of you and help facilitate that conversation until they're good at it on their own. But that is a skill I think most employees need to be very good at, and I think that most are not.
And it is a skill though that can be developed. So there are
Yes.
conflict management skills and training that it's available. We
Yeah.
also got asked a question about other assessments to use in tandem with Omnia. For in-place leaders, 360s are very effective. But again, you got to be careful about how you roll that out, like conflict, because sometimes people will hide behind 360 comments. So if you use 360s, make sure you use a good consultant to help you implement the 360 so you don't have some unintended consequences with your culture or such. But I am a big fan of them when used well. And then also you can measure emotional intelligence. And I think, Carla mentioned it very briefly early on, but it's an underlying trait in all of this that's so important. And again, something that can be developed. So raising awareness of how well we really are able to adapt and apply as an emotional intelligence ability, and assessing that can help set the foundation and build a coaching and development plan around that.
Yeah, and I want to talk just quick about assessment. So, in my 25 years of developing leaders, I'm certified in every tool out there, right? And so when I joined Puzzle and we were looking to partner with someone, my preference was Omnia for many reasons. And I'll tell you quickly why. Number one, for me, Omnia, because of the validation studies and the psychometrics behind the tool that creates the output as accurate as it is one of Omnia's strengths. So that's important to me. If I'm going to use an assessment tool, I want to make sure there's the right science behind that tool. So that's number one for me. Number two, with Omnia, we get to pull different kinds of reports, which is super exciting. So it's not just one kind of report, it's individual contributor, leader, and a sales report, as well as customer focus. So you can kind of pull a report that kind of lends towards what you're looking for. And then what my other favorite piece is that the report is actually in English. And I say that kind of sarcastic. Sorry, Heather, it shouldn't be sarcasm, but you know what I'm saying. It is easy to consume. So someone can read it and learn about themselves without us having to put them through this in-depth psychoanalysis to understand the report, the output of the report. So Omnia serves us well in all those areas, and those 4 traits or characteristics that it assesses are very similar to what most other assessments look at. They're very, very similar to DISC, MBTI. I could go on, but I think it's picking the right one, and the right one has to have some of those baselines that are essential. So we are a partner with Omnia because of that, and it's one of my favorite tools to use over some of the others that I've been certified in. So yes, there's many tools out there, but we need to make sure that the ones we select are good ones that we can stand behind.
Yeah.
There's one more question. I know we're 1 minute ahead of time, but if you guys want to answer it, you can, or.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, it's should leadership always provide coaching and counseling for team members, even in disciplinary action scenarios? How should we gauge giving multiple chances in disciplinary situations?
Carla, I'm going to defer to you because one of the reasons why we love partnering with Puzzle is they're HR experts. And this to me is an HR, probably more of an HR situation than a.
Yeah. And so, you know, number one, when someone's not performing, I'm going to say, I always teach leaders, did you set clear expectations?
Mhm.
The question comes back at you before it goes to them, right? I do not judge someone's output until I examine my role in their output. That's step one for me. So did I set it? Was it clear? Do they have the tools, the resources, the knowledge to do what I'm asking them to do? That is step one for me. If that's not done, then I need to start there. And it would sound something like this. Heather, the last couple of weeks, right? We've missed the goals. I want to make sure that you know what is expected and that you have everything you need to be successful. Let's have that conversation. Reset expectations. Ensure that they're getting what they need. And then steps two, I always say, inspect what you expect, but we inspect with our eyes, not our ears. Meaning, did you get that done? Is not inspection.
Mhm.
Show me what you did. Now we can give feedback. In that, you're developing and coaching them to get to where you want them to be. And then it feels like a partnership instead of me wagging my finger in your face. That doesn't work in today's world, right? I always say we manage things, we lead humans. So you're leading people to success. Now, if they still don't have it, you know, the question is it skill or will? If it's skill, let's develop them. If it's will, let's have the conversation about their desire to win, and reset the expectation. Now, if we've done that several times, you're moving towards this isn't working. And then that's the conversation I encourage us to have. Look at, we've had this conversation 3 or 4, 5, 6, 7 times. We're still not getting the output that we need to get. Let's talk about, is this the right place for you? Is this the right fit for you? I'd rather say that to an employee than whip out this formal written final warning and shoving it in their face. I want to talk to them as a human being to say, let me help you find something if this isn't a good fit for you, right? Maybe we didn't put you in the right role for your strengths. Let me help you find the right role. Maybe internally, it may be external, but I always say when I've ever fired someone, they've always thanked me. And that's crazy, but that's a sign that I've done it with respect and grace towards that other human being, right? So I think it's being transparent. I think it's looking inward first. I think it's a lot of coaching and helping. And then if we're still not there, it's what I call like, let's have that conversation before we keep going into written paper. Yes, written documentation is essential for compliance and all of that, but you're talking about a person, right? And so I think there's that human component that's essential. Did I answer your question? I hope I did.
I think it was really well said, Carla. And I think the key is that setting the expectation and then being consistent in those conversations. So
yeah, but you know, look at when we don't set clear expectations and they fail, that's on us, that's not on them. Right. And when a leader says that's on them, that you just broke trust. You just broke trust because it's like telling somebody that you're holding them accountable for something I didn't know you were holding me accountable for it. Do not assume. Yeah. Don't.
Exactly.
Thank you guys so much for spending this last hour with us. We super appreciate it. If we can help you in any way, myself or Heather, we are more than willing to assist you. You have our contact information. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all.